so that people know. In case you are loud now, they can hear you. Don't be talking smack about me. Don't be talking smack about me.
They're equipment, right? Well, she's in her element. Baby, like, no baby chicken. Yeah, good. Oh, yeah. Just be patient. It's time.
me raise that. Or maybe just raise the sensitivity. Come on, Eamon.
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
Sheila, I can hear you, I can't see you, but I don't know if it's because I have, like I need to, I don't want to close my participants, but maybe that's what it is.
Hi, Mayor, I came, we can hear you pretty good. Speak a little bit.
Can you hear us now?
Can you hear us?
Yes, yes,
Okay, you can hear us, good. Okay.
Phyllis, can you see them?
I sure can,
Okay, very good.
yes.
Well, good evening and welcome to the 2022 State of the City address. I want to thank, of course, Trinidad State College for allowing us to have this event here tonight. I thank you, Rhonda, for allowing that and for being here as well. Before we get started, I want to mention something. I got an email earlier this afternoon. It's concerning, and I don't know if there is anybody here in the audience, but I got a report. I got some information saying that some people think that tonight's address is strictly on the Fisher's Peak project. It is not. It is the State of the City address overall. So I just want to make sure, at the end of the program, I will have questions and answers. We'll take a few questions, some questions, and there may be somebody that has questions on Fisher's Peak. We will answer them to the best of our knowledge. I do have somebody here from CPW that can assist me if that's the case. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. And like I said, there will be a question and answer time at the end of the meeting. Tonight's address is really based on this. Remember the past, but we got to plan for the future. We have to ask ourselves, how do we do this? Our history and culture reminds us where we have come from. Realizing our potential through opportunity, vision, risk, hard work. This is how we build for the future. In 2021 took off where 2020 left. COVID-19 continued to hinder the way City Hall operates. City Hall was closed for part of 2021 and open by appointment only. City Council meetings were virtual, and it was just recently that City Council returned to sitting on the dais and the meetings were open to in-person, public in-person. City Council and boards and commissions are currently being held in person and virtually, which allows anyone to listen in or participate when necessary. By using hybrid meetings, it shows greater transparency by City Hall. Tonight's address is live on YouTube on Trinidad Times TV 71 and will be available on local channel 71 once it's downloaded by Mr. Murphy, and it'll be viewed. People can view that at their leisure from home at any time. Our city manager, who is with us here tonight, has done a tremendous job leading his team during the current pandemic. He has had several personnel get COVID-19, but he and staff have continued to persevere and get the work done. I commend you, Mr. Valentine, for your leadership for your team. But he also, Mr. Valentine, every year all city managers, usually what they do is they have a comment in their final report to City Council, and this is what he said. Because of the efforts of our hardworking staff, the city was able to not only sustain its services, but actually see an increase in revenues over the previous year. It is the caliber of staff that make the difference we see in Trinidad every day. It's quite a statement. So in order to meet his goals and our goals, we have had to add some new staff this past year. We added Sky Tolman, who is our city planner, Jared Chatterley, who's our outdoor recreational specialist, or director, I guess you want to call him. Bob Just is our public works director, and he replaced Tom Beach. Jessica Huffman is our new librarian. She replaced Mallory Pillard. Chris Hall is our planning and administrator, and she replaced Georgie Clark. Talitha Gillespie is our grant writer, something that we've needed for many, many years. And she's already paying some good dividends for the city of Trinidad. She's doing well. Sarah Dixon is our social media coordinator. There are a couple of people that we still need. We are in search of a safety director, and we're also looking to hire a Main Street director, and that's something that I think that we need because it's the Main Street project that we have is sometimes they really do struggle with all the work that's needed to complete and what they want to do. In 2021, we had a lot of accomplishments. The Ozark facility is pretty much already being opened here shortly. Phase 2 of the sewer trunk line, rehabilitation efforts for the Fox Theater, funding for the Space to Create Commons area, Santa Fe Trail improvements, Southside Park field upgrades, continued implementation of the automated meter infrastructure project. And this was really a big thing for, I know, City Council. We hired Buckhorn Ridge Outfitters. They are the new Monument Lake lessee, and they have done a tremendous job cleaning up the cabins with updated amenities and fixing up the campgrounds and the campsites and all the entire grounds. Anyone who has been up to Monument Lake in the past, you've probably seen the condition that it's in. When you go up there now, it's a world of difference. So they're doing a tremendous job. We've also last year we entered into an agreement with the Greenway Foundation to conduct a visioning process for the river. Council appropriated another $500,000 from our cannabis funds to help the business community. And something that is super important are grants. And in order to accomplish a lot of our goals, we need to be able to apply for grants, and not only apply for grants, but we need to be able to receive these grants. And that's the reason, like I say, we have Talitha Gillespie on. But prior to this, Mr. Valentine and some of the staff have been doing a lot of the grant writing. So these are some of the grants that we received this last year. We got a traffic study and put forth $150,000. The Space to Create Commons, $1.5 million. Trail to Fisher's Peak with Los Angeles County Commissioners. We went in on this together to get this grant for $150,000. The Fox Theater rehabilitation received $3.45 million. The Fox Theater facade received $250,000. And we also received the $1 million from the American Recover Act. And that was $1 million, like I said. We got a Brownsfield grant, Brownsfield EPA grant for $500,000. Riverwalk lighting, $143,000. And like I mentioned, we got the first allotment of the $1 million from the ARPA funds. One thing that we have to be very careful of is that Mr. Valentine did not want to expend any of this money. And the reason being is that the rules had not been sent down from the state or the federal government. And it was just in January that the rules finally did come down. So he did not want to finalize any of the money until we received the final rules. One thing that we were not successful in as we applied for a grant for the Santa Fe Trail, but like I said, we were not successful there. And I'll mention something else later on in my address. The 2021 starting budget was $47,100,495, but it was adjusted by council and in the direction of staff to $49,198,101 due to increased revenue, which enabled us to do, other projects. Finance Director Cheryl Navarrete informed council that sales tax collected for 2021 was 8.51% higher than budgeted in the amount of $876,748, or 13.7% more than 2020. Our general fund revenue of $16,006,364 over expenditures of $14,158,621. A gain of $1,847,000 over the projected 2021 budget. Projected unaudited sales tax collected in 2021 was $11,184,360 compared to $10,307,412 in 2020. That being said, the city is financially sound according to our 2020 audit. Our 2021 audit is coming up, of course, shortly too. Tim Dixon complimented Cheryl on how well she was prepared for the annual audit. She also informed us that the unaudited cannabis revenue for 2021 is $4,337,469 compared to, in 2020, $4,714,474, or 8% less than 2020. Proposition 119, which was on the ballot this last year, was killed by the voters. And that was a good thing, because what would have happened is that it would have put an additional revenue amount or tax amount on the sales, on the marijuana revenues that we received, by an additional, I think, 5%. And then on top of that, we have New Mexico that is coming online here, I think in April. That's going to be an additional tax that we would have to confront. So it really would have put us in kind of a bad position, and we might have lost a lot more revenue than we originally thought of.
The sales tax from Charles is.
This time, we want to show a chart of some of the distributions that occurred. Ad valorem taxes showed a slight decrease from 2020. Also, council approved salary increases for all employees. This here is one thing that's bothersome to, I believe, of course, Mr. Haas is here. Severance tax. It decreased. This is the city of Trinidad share. It was decreased last year by $77,351 compared to 2020. And the projection is that we will see another decrease this year. It's really aggravating because there are minerals, and the money that comes from the minerals comes out of this county. It should come back to us. It should not go to Colorado Springs and Denver, Fort Collins, where they don't need the revenue. They have good revenue. So I believe it should come back here. I'm not sure if that'll ever happen, but that's something that I think that should happen. Capital projects expenditures in 2021. We had 88 projects of $850,000 that we've done. Even though that we actually had budgeted more than that, but the reason why we could not do more was because the availability of contractors. As we know, building contractors are in short supply these days, and even though we had a lot of money, I think it was $1.5 million, is what I think we had projected, so you can see that we were not able to do everything that we wanted to do because of the contractor availability. Citywide paving, we did $1 million. Storm drainage was $50,000. Riverwalk improvements were $175,000. Monument Lake was $250,000. Americana Road was $100,000. CDOT, city traffic infrastructure, was $200,000. The space to create was $94,000. Sewer infrastructure was $560,000. And the animal shelter that we added this last year was another $511,000. Our fire department is doing well. David Bacharach is the new fire chief, replacing Tim Howard, who retired. The one issue that I know that everybody gets very concerned with is crime. Crime continues to be an issue in Trinidad and the entire area. But with the K-9 dogs that the city has, the PD has been able to take a substantial amount of drugs off the streets. Meth, fentanyl, and heroin seem to be driving most of the crime, not only in Trinidad, but across the entire country. Chief Glorioso has had difficulty retaining officers. However, he recently acquired 5 new officers. So he's getting close to having a full staff. Today, police work requires several different approaches. Due to legislation, and council has made it a point to give our officers the tools necessary to do their jobs safely and efficiently. I'm going to give you some numbers for the calls for service for the past 3 years. Actually, in 2021, calls for service were down slightly from 2020. In 2021, there were 16,049 calls for service. 2020, there were 16,248, so there was a minor adjustment there. And in 2019, there were 17,646. But the big issue I think everybody hears and sees is the severity of the crime that's being committed. And when we had our legislative days, Chief Glorioso got up and reported that some of the severity of the more severe crimes, the murders and just people getting accosted, those areas did rise. But it's just an issue that I think we, not only here in Trinidad, Los Angeles County, the state, the entire country is faced with. It's just continually increasing. What the answer is, we don't know. All we can do is let the police and the sheriff's department and whoever is involved in police work do their work and do the best work that they possibly can. One of the things that bothered me when I was running this last election is a couple of people asked me, what is your position on defunding the police? And I said, absolutely not. I do not believe in it, will never believe in it. First of all, the city of Trinidad funds our police department. We do not get funding from the state. So defunding the police department, as long as I am in this office, that will not even be brought up. The Trinidad Community Foundation was informed that they would receive $700,000 over the next 2 years from House Bill 21-1215 for crime prevention and recidivism. And they're going to be working with other entities in the city and the county to try to best use that money. Attorney General Phil Weiser announced that a settlement was reached with some pharmaceuticals and millions of dollars from the opioid settlement would be coming to Colorado over the next 18 years. Trinidad and Los Angeles County would be receiving a share of these funds. Our Power and Light Department continues to struggle in revenue to expenditures, and a rate stubber will be coming shortly. But we also made an investment in a new truck. But with all of the shortages of, equipment, but parts and pieces that need to build a lot of vehicles these days, we won't be able to receive this piece of equipment until 2023. We were also informed by the Arkansas River Power Authority that an agreement has been reached with Guzman Energy to purchase power beginning in 2025. And we feel like it's going to be stabilized for several years by going with that. Our gas, water, power line, sewer departments, road and bridge, Parks and Rec continue to provide the daily necessary services that we all expect from the City of Trinidad administration and workers. And they do a good job. City Council also approved additional monitoring components for CH2M for the sewer department that will allow us to keep better tracking of some of the components at the sewer, for the sewer department. Our landfill is now an enterprise fund, and we are beginning to see some improvement in their budget. Mr. Valentine has informed us that some major equipment will be needed for the landfill, because some of the equipment is old. I think some of the major equipment is being they're worn down. So we're going to have to make a major investment over the next few years as we see it. The advanced metering system that is being worked on, which will allow better monitoring in the water, gas, and power and light, is having some completion issues due to product availability. That, of course, is not only here but everywhere. Many of our boards and commissions are needing members. If anyone is interested, please contact Audra, because there are some positions that are needed. Tourism has seen an uptick in the area, and our Welcome Center is now open, and ambassadors have returned to greet the travelers. Lodging tax receipts were $400,000. Expenditures were $315,000. The 2021 budget was, however, $260,000. And the budgeted amount for expenditures was $192,000. So the revenue was $260 versus $192 in expenditures. As everyone knows, as you travel up to Walmart, you can see the Exit 11 bypass. Considerable progress is being made there, and I have heard that there's a chance that maybe by the end of the year they might be pretty well on their way to completion. That's going to be a really big deal, because it's going to allow access from downtown to Fisher's Peak to Trinidad State Park, and it's just going to be allow better traffic pattern. On a recreation, as we know, Fisher's Peak remains a priority. Mr. Chatterley is also working with the Greenway Foundation on the river visioning that we talked about. The RAD cycling and running event was very successful, with over 600 cyclists and over 100 runners. Housing, as we all have been hearing, is a major concern. The mine has reopened, and the miners are desperately needing housing. The East Street School is being renovated by Urban Neighborhoods under Dana Crawford, and that will add some studio apartments. The new Garden Inn by Hilton is under construction. That will add approximately 100 rooms to the city, and that will be really good, because this last year when we had the RAD event, I think there was some difficulties for some of these people trying to find rooms to rent. So adding another 100 rooms is going to be really it's going to be good for our events when we have large events like this coming into the community. The old Ben Franklin building has been renovated, and some businesses have moved in upstairs. Trinidad Commercial Construction finished Sister Blandina's Park. It's a beautiful, beautiful site. A new bank and realty company have moved into the Champions building. And I also want to thank Marty Hackett and all the volunteers that made the 200th anniversary of the Santa Fe Trail a success. She did a heck of a lot of work, she and her volunteers. And it just so happened that it was on the same day as the Rad Fest, so we had a lot of activity in town. It was kind of cool to see. Going on to 2022. 2022, as we all know, started with the swearing in of course, myself, Councilwoman Karen Rico, and we also sworn in was Councilman Neiman Thurman, who's sitting with us here tonight. So thank you for signing up. Also, Council voted Aaron Ogletree as our Mayor Pro Tem for the next 2 years. The 2022 budget is $56,943,915. And today I was thinking, You know, I've been in this office for 6 years. So I said, what was our budget back in 2016 when I took office? So I went back and I looked. The budget in 2016 was $30 million. You know, that's an additional $26 million over and above in the last 6 years. So that tells you that the progress that this community is making. Finance Director Navarrete has projected an increase of 12.8% in sales and use tax for 2022. The budget that we have proposed no major reduction in services. Instead, it proposed to add new positions to better the services that we provide. Staff recommended and council approved $19,953,569 for capital projects. These are some of the projects that we approved. $2 million for ADA citywide improvements, money for a traffic study, money for Americana Road, IT infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, some more money for the space to create, sidewalk revolving fund, Brownsville grant, money for the waterworks building, which we're going to rehab into a recreational. I think that's where Jared Chatterley's office is going to go into at some point. We also did some buildings rehabilitation, money for the Fox Theater, citywide paving, storm drainage, more Riverwalk improvements, and of course, we've allocated more money for Monument Lake to improve the facilities at Monument Lake. New and future activity. We have applied for a $2 million grant to widen and add a pike and pedestrian trail on Santa Fe Trail. And we will be receiving the second half of the American Recovery Act funds, and we will consider how to best use these funds now that the rules have been received. Broadband, as you know, is high on the list. If the city is to move into the 21st century, broadband is the necessary tool if we want to attract new businesses and those individuals that want to work from home. Currently, 1 in 7 jobs are remote in the United States today, and that number is expected to grow. I look at broadband, like I said, as kind of the cog in the wheel. If we're going to grow and attract these people and the businesses, I had a meeting yesterday with people from the mine, actually the people that are going to be building the railroad up there. Mentioned to him that we're going to try to bring in broadband. And of course, that's one of the major things that new businesses are looking for. They want broadband services, which will provide a good stable amount, but it will also, we're looking at, it could possibly provide a less expensive service to the businesses and the residents of the city. Like I said, a major issue, of course, with broadband was House Bill 152. I'm not sure what year that was adopted, but that needs to be rescinded by a vote of the people. Basically, 152 hogtied all of Colorado to only a couple of providers. And we met with people from CDOT some time back, and they told us that around 90% of communities in the state of Colorado have done away with 152 because they realized that if they did not do away with it, that they could not move forward with their own broadband services even if they wanted to. So that is something that we need to do here in Trinidad. So what we need to do is this fall we will be asking the voters to rescind 152 by a ballot measure. And if passed, this will allow us to proceed with broadband. Like I said, currently we're in discussion how to proceed. This will require the city to establish a new enterprise fund. We believe that there is a good possibility that we'll be able to offer, like I said, businesses and constituents a more reliable and less expensive internet system. We've also asked to try to begin with this project. To begin with, we have asked our IT director to do a cost analysis for the project so that we know what we're going to be faced with. This year, we expect more state and infrastructure funds that will become available. As you know, the president has allocated some more infrastructure funds, and believe that we will be able to apply for many of these funds. The big thing there is every time we tell Cheryl we're going to have more grants, she kind of shakes her head, pulls her hair, and says, "You want to do what?" We will also continue to work on our river visioning project. That's going to be a big thing, I think, for the city of Trinidad. We will continue to upgrade the river walk with additional lighting and a good cleanup of the overgrowth that we see down on the river bottom. We are expecting the master plan for Fisher's Peak to be completed in March. Simpson's Rest is an underutilized asset. I believe we can turn it into an attraction. Those of us who have been up there and you look around, it's unbelievable the view that we have from up there. So it's like I said, it's an asset that I think that we need to build on. We're also considering some incentives for developers to build housing. And like I said earlier, housing has been a major problem because the mine has come in. As of yesterday, we heard that they have 71 employees that I guess work at the mine, but they have a total of 131 employees. So they continue to need more housing. However, we have heard that there are some housing projects that are on the board right now that hopefully will come to fruition by the end of the year, or at least we can see some inroads to the housing shortage that we have. Sky Tallman and Wally Wallace and an outside consultant are working on recommendations, and there are plans for there are new plans for housing developments in town. Code enforcement needs to be addressed. I think that we see major issues around town with code enforcement, and I think we need to push that really hard this year. Because if we're going to really attract people into this community, and they come in and they say, "You have a beautiful community." A lot of them say that now, but I think we need to beautify our community by doing many other things. Cleaning up the back streets, taking some of the stuff off the walls, all the stuff that people put up. So I think that's really going to be an important thing that we do here in 2021. According to Jared Chatterley, the Rad Fest will return again in October. Last year when we had the Rad Fest and we had a follow-up meeting, the people from the event that put on the event for us told us that there's a good chance that it could double this next year. We don't know if that's true, but we've also met with the mayor of Leadville, and that's where the major event is of that event. And he said that event continues to grow, and actually they've had to put a cap on the number of cyclists because it's gotten to the point where it just really has outgrown Leadville, I guess, to a certain degree. So they're having to they've had to put a cap on it. I want to really commend Jared Chatterley. This guy is a visionary. This last year we were in a meeting, and I don't even remember what meeting it was, but he brought up the thought. It says, Trinidad True Outdoors. Think of that just for a second. So as we're sitting there, I told him, I think that's a cool saying. Why don't we try to adopt that? So he's been building on that. And he is currently working on the logo. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking this to council and asking them to adopt the Trinidad True Outdoors. I think that really will say something for our area, because we're trying to create Trinidad and the area as a destination point. So how best to identify it is with a good logo and something that will strike people to say there's something to do in Trinidad and Los Animas County. He's also wanting to make some merchandise, do some merchandising, I guess, t-shirts, hats, whatever, pencils, I'm not sure exactly what, to be able to sell or pass out. So I think this is something that I think will really begin to put an emphasis on what we're trying to achieve here in Trinidad. He's also he's working on the construction of an 18-hole disc golf course. Disc golf is actually beginning to pick up everywhere. And he thinks that this could be an additional amenity that we have here. So like I said, the overall goal is to make Trinidad a destination for tourism, while also giving residents additional amenities and things to do. The recent windstorms caused some major breakers to fail at the power plant, and council has allocated funds to replace them. You know, we don't think a lot about what goes on. We just know that the lights go on, the water flows, and we flush the toilets, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't really think of some of the things that really go on behind the scenes. These breakers that failed, I think cost around, I think somewhere around, when it's all said and done, it's going to be around $500,000 by the time we buy the breakers, the labor and everything. But that's something that has to be done, so we've allocated some money for that. When I-25 was reconstructed, we lost our main entry to the Welcome Center. And I would like for us to begin discussion for a new Welcome Center that will allow for a better ingress and egress to Trinidad. You know, when the old ingress and egress that we had, it was so simple and it was very nice. But then they took that all away from us. I'm not sure how in the heck or why it happened, but it did. And the numbers went down considerably. In 2019, tourism contributed $24.4 billion to the state's economy and $1.5 billion in state and local taxes. Our tourism tax began to rise this last year. And the projection is that this year, that we will continue to rise because of COVID, that I believe more people will be getting out in the country, in the state, visiting hopefully our city. So we need to be able to have something to attract and keep them here. Tourism is also going to buy a new van, and the reason for it is right now the trolley is very big. And it's hard for that trolley to maneuver in all parts of the city. And sometimes when there's large events, there needs to be the ability to take tourists to and from hotels and maybe other parts of town. So they are planning on purchasing the van to be able to do just that. So that's something that, like I said, that's the big plan for them for right now. In closing, Trinidad is a special community. Our historic buildings and history are next to none. Many of our residents have roots that date back to the inception of Trinidad as a city and earlier. A culture was born through the past 200 plus years from agriculture, the Wild West, and mining. Those are the predominant areas where our culture has come from. And the people that came from all parts of the world to work in the mines back in the early 1900s. We are a hardworking and resilient community, and we must remain that way. As we welcome new residents, we must not lose sight of our culture and history. My hope is that the new residents will recognize and embrace what we have and come to appreciate our culture and history. As your mayor, I will work with all city council members, city manager, staff, boards, missions, and volunteers to continue the revitalization of Trinidad and to keep our culture and history on the forefront. I must thank the city council, city manager, Mike Valentine, and all of his staff for their hard work and dedication. This community has a very dedicated staff. I recognize it. I know that our city council members also recognize that. And I'm sure that those of you that have worked with our staff probably can recognize that as well. And it is because of that dedication that we have the necessary services for daily life. As we move forward, my hope is that with all this hard work, that the quality of life for Trinidad residents is improved. If we don't remember where we came from, how can we chart a path to our future? Thank you. At this time, I'd like to... At this time, we'll take some questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, I just want to say I think you guys are doing a great job progressing from where we started when I was on council with you all. I am very excited to see all these new people coming to Trinidad, and per your recommendation that they embrace our culture here, I think we also need to embrace them back, because they have chosen to make our community their community with investments, business adventures, other kinds of family kind of requisites that are bringing their children to start their roots here too. And with that being said, I'd also like to make mention that we have a real great opportunity with all the people that are coming through on I-25. We took these studies years ago to determine how many people were passing through on our interstate and how many were stopping just for gas. And maybe for some other small incidentals, but then they were passing on. And now they're starting to stay, they're lingering. They're exploring, and we have an ample amount of opportunity to pull more and more people here because of our only interstate entrance that has a mountain pass. And right now we have, like you said, a plethora of opportunity. And I just hope that this council, along with the county commissioners, make sure they keep that vision to take advantage of all those true Trinidad outdoor or Trinidad true outdoor opportunities that are going to be our next opportunity for us. So we're not just a one-trick pony town any longer. When my parents came here from Santa Fe, my dad helped out with a lot of the coal miners with black lung cases. So for my family, those coal miners still resonate with us. Even though I'm not, well, my parents are from here. I was raised here. And I have been Trinidad true and through. But yet I still recognize that there are others that are going to come and take advantage of our community and want to be a part of it. And we should embrace them as well. Work hard to make sure that all of our amenities and natural resources are protected and yet still taken advantage of to a certain degree where we can have them linger for generations to come while having an economic boom that is different than what we've ever had before. Thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you for saying that, Mr. Lopez. Other questions? Yes, Pat.
I have a really specific one. I see people up on Simpson's Wrist with binoculars, seeing what they can see. I understand we own 2 of those long-range viewers. They're kind of oval-shaped, but they haven't been put up. Do you know if there's any plans? Jared, here tonight? No. Is there any plans to put those up there?
Mr. Valentine, do you know anything about that?
I will look into it there.
They're in storage right now, so we're in town.
Okay.
One of the things that has to happen with Simpson's Rest, it gets vandalized quite a bit, but there is power up there. And as a matter of fact, I've talked to Mr. Valentine about this. And I believe that I know that we can put, a camera or 2 up there so that people will know that they're being monitored. And that's going to be, and the other thing that's going to have to happen is because it's a cliff, and we're probably going to have to put a fence around it, in front of it. There's going to have to be some work done before that can happen. But I believe that we can make that an asset that we can utilize for tourism and even us. I know growing up, not growing up, but when I was going to college here, I used to go up there quite a bit with my wife and spend the day up there. So it's very nice. It's a very nice place to be. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if you could expand a little on, you're talking about addressing the code enforcement. I've heard that around town as well. And just curious if you have specifics on, what that might look like, when you might start to ramp that up and start to really address this.
Well, I know that that's a discussion that, of course, Ms. Grego was our mayor pro tem up until the end of the year. And we had some serious discussion about that. And we just feel that around town. Just some of the trash that goes on in the streets. I think that businesses can be more assertive and clean up in front of their businesses, clean their windows periodically. Even the residential areas, try to help clean them up. There's just a lot of different, just little things can go a long way to making our community look better. And I think the better you make it look, I think the safer it also becomes. Yes?
But along that same line, what is being done? Because the weeds don't seem to be, there is an ordinance, the dead trees, there's an ordinance, the cars, the graffiti, there's ordinances in the charter for all these. Yet, year after year, the same graffiti is on the walls. The weeds are the same. You know, what is being done by the city? I see you want to project that there's improvement, but what is happening now? I know there's a fine you can have if you don't cut your weeds. Maybe all that needs to be shortened or revitalized, or?
We've had that discussion, and I think we're going to have a serious discussion on it here shortly. You talked about graffiti. The city recently purchased a piece of equipment that will help remove graffiti, and it can be removed on public property as well as private property.
But I believe the ordinance right now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the resident has 10 days or something to remove it, or else the city will move it, the graffiti, and then fine the resident that's not?
There is, and that's where I know that there's been, that I know that Ms. Grego and I disagree with some of the way the ordinance is, the time frame
Right.
that's in place right now. I just believe that it needs to be changed. Go ahead, Karen.
Well, about a year ago, I believe, if not, maybe a little longer than a year ago, Mr. Valentine, Miss Ogletree, who's also on council, and I went and had a meeting with Sergeant Addo and Chief Glorioso about it. So there's a couple of things that are happening in Trinidad that are kind of improving it, but like all things that need improving, it's going to take money, because what we did is we told the code enforcement officer, drop down, because I think at first the ordinance was, or the ruling was 30 days. After you get your first notice, it's 30 days. Well, the whole process is like 3 months from the time you get your first notice to the time that the city can act on it. But the problem with that, especially like with abandoned properties, is that, okay, we come to the end of the process. So what do you do with that property? The city would either have to take it over on an ADO, and the money for that is and the time is consuming to try and find out who that property belongs to. What I will tell you, I really watch realtor.com and all the real estate sites for the city of Trinidad, and I'll tell you what's happening right now is, for years, what you have to understand about Trinidad is the generation, my parents' generation left, and my generation didn't stay either. So when the parents died, the house is sitting here vacant. It's not in good repair. And the people that inherited the house say, it's not worth fixing it, it's not worth selling it, because property values in Trinidad aren't high. Well, that's changing now. If you look at Realtor, you're gonna see properties that you never thought in your life were selling. And that is helping a tad. Not much, I'll admit
I
that.
totally agree with you, and I see where you're coming from, but I'm referring to where there is somebody living, where people are living.
I understand.
And the graffiti that's on the wall, even at the old Amato building and right across the street, and in-house yards where people are living. I totally agree, and I understand there's a problem if there's nobody living there and you can't find the owner, but there's still so much.
This is where the community can be proactive, because I do it. I did it even before I was on council. If you see a piece of property, call Sergeant Haddo and tell him, I've done it several times.
I've done it several
And
times.
call him and tell him, Sergeant Haddo, this needs to be cleaned up. It's a mess. I've had people that, and sometimes, I don't know how these properties get overlooked, but like on the Boulevard addition, where Boulevard Street is, do you know where that at? Okay. So I have had two people down there that have called me and they said, Mrs. Grego, you gotta come down here and see this. This is atrocious. So I did. And it was. So I called Tony Haddo, I called Chief Glorioso, and they worked on it. And it's getting better. So you have to be proactive. You have to help us. If you see something like that, you know how to get a hold of me. If you don't want to call Sergeant.
Oh, I don't mind having a problem calling.
Okay.
I do have to call pretty much every 8 weeks because by then the same weeds are grown again. And where my concern is, those tall weeds dry, and
Yes.
then there's so much foot traffic that are flicking cigarettes. A whole street could go in no time
I
at all.
know.
And I know the police have other reasons for doing their patrols, but I'm sure they could even see, 3 feet high.
Well, part of
weeds.
the problem,
Well, one thing I want to interject here is that, Margaret, is that we do need to do a better job.
yeah. No,
That's
absolutely.
really the bottom line. That's what you're asking for us to do a better job. And I think that is our job as city council.
Right.
Working with our city manager, and he working with code enforcement. And if there's any changes that have to be made to the ordinances, that will have to be done. And we need to enforce them. We not only walk the walk, but we need to, or talk the talk, but walk the walk.
I would like to see that. I read, it comes out in the paper regularly, in the spring, there's gonna be a fine, the weeds 6 inches high. And then it's just like a little warning that doesn't seem to be enforced. And maybe it is. For years, I've been addressing this, and I just wonder, well, what are y'all doing now? I see changes have to be made, but
Well, I will.
Let us work on that. And like I
Yeah,
said,
we are.
We'll work on that and try to get it changed.
I will
Okay.
tell you that, excuse me, I'm sorry. I will tell you that every time you call the police department and bring a property to their attention, they do take care of it.
yes, they do.
Yes, sir.
Great things are happening, and what a great state of the city. One of the things I'd like for us to try and, because they're all adults here, but some of the folks that aren't really represented are some of the youth in our community. And if you start looking at what makes a community most vibrant and most powerful is how we treat the lesser of us. And if we look over at Kit Carson Park, we'll see that there's been a slide there that has a piece of plywood where a slide should be. And if you go right across over here, there's a place that used to have kids playing soccer. And if you look at some of the places, so we're talking about recreation, outdoor recreation, we're talking about Fisher's Peak, and we're talking about these great places, but we've got kids here that in many cases have nothing to do. And so when we look at graffiti, when we look at some of those things out there, when you give kids nothing to do, I guarantee you when I was a kid, I found something to do. You find something to do. We don't have Little League. There used to be we have a Triggers ball team here, and we don't have kids playing that could ever make that team. We don't have kids playing soccer. We don't have anything in this community for children. And I know us big people are talking about all the things we can do, and how we can get more business here and get people off the streets and off the highway. But I really want to just ask those in power to actually start looking at some kids. They've had a very tough time these last 2 years. If you think us adults have had a tough time over the last couple of years, I guarantee the kids that are at home had a tougher time. And so what I'm not seeing in anything that's being said is we got a slide over here at a park kids can't slide on. We got soccer fields we invested in the kids can't play soccer on. We're going to get a frisbee golf course for adults. I'm telling you what, the lesser of us makes a community. Communities should be graded on how we treat the weakest of us, not how we bring other folks and tourists in. So for me, I would really like to encourage the mayor and the town council, start looking at where you are in this budget and where you are in your processes to get the youth of this community engaged in their community. The kids that go to our elementary schools, our middle schools, our high schools, that have had a very, very, very tough time the last couple of years. And I'm not seeing enough done to help those guys go in. Because you know what? We help kids, then we help their parents. We help kids, we help their grandparents. We help kids, we do all those other kinds of things. So I'm really imploring the mayor and the council that when you go show up to those Tuesday meetings and you see nothing on your agenda that has to do with kids, put something on that damn agenda. Okay?
You know, in response to that, you know, in the past, you know, we had little league teams,
Yeah.
baseball, football,
Bring it back.
basketball.
Bring it back.
But one of the problems that we're seeing today is that sometimes they might advertise for these teams, but these kids don't show up and the parents don't push their
Not buying
kids.
it.
And, you know, the parents don't really push their kids to say, you know, I
Not
want you
going
to
to buy it, Phil. Not
Would
going to buy
you,
it.
would you mind if I finish?
Yeah.
And these kids, you know, the parents need to be part of that, to say, I want you to participate.
Let's make it available.
Anyway,
Let's
there's,
make it
there-
available.
May I answer?
there's another question back there.
Please.
I go to swim in Raton during the winter, 4 or 5 days a week. I go at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that swimming pool is filled from 6 to 10:30. They close, and then they open up again at 3:30, and the pool is filled again with kids and adults swimming all night long. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see, because there's yoga going on there. There's just so many things going on for kids, and that's just one of the things. And it's not only kids, it's adults and everything. But I agree with him that I have 4 grandchildren, and they're involved in a lot. But I think that I appreciate you bringing that up, that kids need to be thought about, and you know. And I agree with you. Parents got to get involved also.
Yes.
You know, I agree 100% about parents, and my 2 daughters and their kids, they're involved in a lot, but the more you have to offer, the more you're going to have for these kids to do. And I think that I would like to see our pool or farm pool enclosed or something to that sense.
Okay. One thing I just want to make a correction here. These kids, these children, younger people, they're not the lesser of us. They are just the younger generation. Okay.
Well, to address Tom's, I guess, statement about the swimming pool. So we had a wish list on council last year, and we set up priorities for capital improvement projects that we wanted done. And the Parks and Rec Board and the council agreed that enclosing our swimming pool was our #1 priority. We allocated $1.5 million. But now comes Jared Chatterley from Raton, who was deeply involved in that. And we're trying to figure out how we can physically do it with the money that we have without putting the city in jeopardy. Because he advises that when that happened in Raton is having a hard time paying the debt down for that. So we're working on it, but you have to understand these big projects like this take a long time to come to fruition. And as far as Mr. Hollis, the statement that you made, you know, city council, and I'm not making excuses, city council can't do everything for everybody. If you have children that are school age that want to do a little league or whatever their heart's desire, they want to do skateboarding or whatever. If you have an idea, come to council with your idea, tell us this is X amount of dollars we need, and we need these resources, these in-kind services from the city, and I'll bet you any money you're going to get it. But we cannot, as a city, complete that, we have to have partnerships with people that volunteer in the community.
We have a rec district and department that actually could, and Phil said, has done that before. This isn't anything new. Soccer and baseball has been in this community for a long time.
But
It just got stopped.
You've got to understand, Mr. Howlett, that we've gone through COVID. Everything stopped.
Kids have to.
Well, then spread the word. If you know somebody that wants to coach soccer, tell them to approach the council.
Get the rec district to put a league together. I bet people would sign up.
Well, tell them to come with the budget. We've got some money.
We will take that under advisement. Thank you very much. Mr. Lopez.
Oh, I was going to comment on, is it Ms. Margaret's comment about the code enforcement. There is a software program out there called C-Click Fix. And that was brought to my attention through a CML meeting years ago, where you can have a software program where you can jot down from your phone, from your computer, what a problem is, and it will go directly towards your public works department, etc. And people can see in real time when things are occurring. Like something will be on the schedule, you'll see which city employee is supposed to go and do something to mitigate that issue, and then you'll see what happens afterwards. So it might be a way to have a solution to this issue that is more in the new technological era that can keep people apprised of what kind of progress is going on from your complaint directly. And that's kind of, I think, when it's always good to have a solution to all these problems, and that might be a simple fix with a software purchase, and therefore it keeps people aligned, and the people of the community can also see where that project is standing in real time.
You know, I believe that code enforcement is probably a difficult animal to control in any community. Like I said, during my tenure, I've been to other communities, all the way from Denver all the way down to other communities, and I walked around, and every community has issues and I only see what's in front of me. I couldn't see some of the residential areas, but as I pass through some of the residential areas, you can see the problems that people have. And so, but I believe that we can do better.
Sure, and this just gives people recourse. They have a complaint, and then they have some type of follow-up. And it makes us feel like we're not only part of the complaint, but we're part of the solution as well. In my neighborhood, someone named Ken Sanchez got sprayed up all over. And I don't know if he did or someone did it because they're mad at Ken. But I know Ken Sanchez, and he's all over on the synagogue, on Garfield Street. I mean, it was all over, and it's still there. And when I was on council, if I approached Chief Glorioso, hey, we've got some spray painting going on, it got taken care of quickly because I was on council. But when you have someone who's not on council, you don't always get that same attention.
You know, one thing I was going to mention about graffiti, this last year, Mr. Valentine purchased a piece of equipment that will remove graffiti, and I think it's a water-based type thing. And it can be used by public buildings, which we will do, public areas. But let's say if you're a private landowner, private owner and if someone has gone and sprayed your house, your garage, your fence, you can ask us to remove it. The only thing is, there'll have to probably be a waiver because there could be some damage that could be done. But at least it will remove it. So keep that in the back of your mind, and if you see graffiti around, you might want to mention that to people that have graffiti, and we'll help you try to remove that. Other questions? Yes, Carl.
Not a question so much as it is a statement, and I just want to thank you and council. I think that you've become much more forward-thinking than we have been in the past. Clearly, you mentioned budget numbers from 2016 to now increased somewhere in the 45% range. That says a lot for the health of our community. And I also want to thank you all for your public-private partnerships. I think together we can accomplish a lot more than we can separately. So I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate it.
You're exactly right. And
yes.
We work hard as a city to try to get grants, budget money that we get through sales taxes and other revenues. But also the private partnerships, like you mentioned, are very important. And that's, probably years ago that was not so. But today it is more important than it ever was to have that public-private partnership, because when you apply for a grant, a lot of times, I think if they recognize in that grant that there's some public or some private money to help, they look at it probably, I'm sure they look at it differently. So they recognize, what's interesting, been interesting over the past few years, is the way the state views the city of Trinidad now. Years ago, it was kind of like, there's Trinidad. Now they listen to us. That's good to see. Other questions? Yes, Pat?
Any updates on the Front Range Rail, especially with regards to coming to Trinidad?
That is I'll be honest with you, that is a major concern of mine right now. Up until April, I will be the representative of the area to the current Southwest Chief and Amtrak passenger rail service. When they decided to do the rail district, everything went fine. But what happened at the last minute somewhere, at one point, somewhere at the last minute, somebody changed some language. And what it said is that prior to that you either have to be a representative for this area, the South Central Council of Governments, a board member, or an elected or previously elected official. Somewhere in the last hour or whatever, that was changed, where it had to be a member only of a Council of Governments. So that threw me out. I have 4 years of experience on that commission. So to me, going in to this new rail district, continuity is a really, really major issue right now. The only way that I can get in right now is through a governor's appointment. And what's happening is, I have been pushing since I've been on there, is currently the Southwest Chief comes out of Chicago through Trinidad and west. We've been working on trying to get what they call a through car service that goes to La Junta, Pueblo, and then up north. And that's all fine. I support that because that's where the ridership is going to increase from. But if you take a look at it, if someone from Chicago wants to, or let's say someone from Denver wants to go back to Chicago, that direction is fine. But let's say they want to go west. Well, what happens is when this through car service happens, they would have to go to La Junta and back to Trinidad and then on west. That's going to add probably another 6 hours of travel time. So you're going to have less people riding that train or wanting to ride that train because it's going to add hours to that, to their travel time. So what I would like to see, and I've been pushing, and the current members that are on there have been supportive of me to try to get, once this through car service happens, to go from Pueblo to Trinidad directly, but also maintain that one through car service that goes to La Junta because it's got to go to the East Coast. So you can see the problem that lies there, and what's happening right now is I talked to our director of the commission, and there is only one person that's on the current commission that's going on to the district right now. Everybody else is coming out of Denver, Fort Collins, and everybody up north. There's one person that's going on, and that is Jill Gabriel from Colorado Springs. So that tells me that if we don't have somebody in there that has some history, we're going to get buried. And here's the problem, is that the current Council of Governments is going to appoint someone to be on that commission, and that's okay. But do they really feel like this is an important, if this is really that important to try to get that rail down here, that passenger rail down here? So it's a really, really big concern of mine. And like I said, with that, I'm trying to get on with a direct appointment from the governor right now. Other questions? Okay. Well, I hope that I have been able to give everyone here a rendering of the past and the present and the future for our community. Thank you for that you came tonight, and stay tuned and stay on top of this. We need a little push every now and then, and I thank you for that. So good night. And,
Very good.
one last thing I did not mention just before you all go away is if you want a copy of the cannabis revenue and the distribution, you guys could have picked one up and back.